Matt, where are we at with the numbers?
Number 25 in the 1970s on Best Ever Albums. Number 5 in 1972. Cracking the top 100 at 99 overall of all time. And in Rolling Stone's list, I believe it's his highest ranked album at number 72 in the top 500 in Rolling Stone.
All right, thank you for that. So Harvest, released February 14th, 1972. This is Neil Young's fourth studio album. We last talked about After the Gold Rush in episode 8 of this season, so go check that out. That's the album that preceded this one. The recording and creation was pretty spontaneous and happened over the course of many months in 1971. Following the release of After the Gold Rush at the end of August 1970, Neil started an acoustic tour of North America that was titled Journey Through the Past. He played Buffalo Springfield songs, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young songs, and songs from his previous albums along with new stuff. With the tour continuing into 1971, it slowly shifted to more and more new songs and material. Near the end of the tour, in February of 1971, he performed Needle and the Damage Done on the Johnny Cash TV show in Nashville. Also appearing on that show were Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor. In the behind the scenes or in the audience or there was producer Elliot Mazer, and he had recently opened a new studio in Nashville called Quadraphonic Sound Studios, which was a converted old Victorian house. He convinced Young the night of or the next day of the Johnny Cash show to record his next album there. And so starting that Saturday night, Young started recording songs that would be on Harvest. He knew some of the session musicians from that area, known as Area Code 615, who had recorded at Quadraphonic Studios. So that was kind of all he needed to convince him to record there. And none of those musicians from Area Code 615 were available because session musicians always play on Saturday nights typically to make money, especially in Nashville. And so Elliot Mazer scrambled and found three other musicians, Kenny Buttry, who was the drummer, bassist Tim Drummond, who apparently was just walking down the street and got asked to be record, and steel guitarist Ben Keith. Neil Young later nicknamed them the Stray Gators, and they would later tour with him in 1973, along with another guy who I will talk about in a minute. That night, they recorded Old Man and two tracks not on this album, Bad Fog of Loneliness and Dance, 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 which Dance, Dance, Dance was a Crazy Horse, on a Crazy Horse album. And Heart of Gold was recorded either that Sunday or Monday of that weekend, and Ronstadt and Taylor came in to sing backing vocals on Heart of Gold and Old Man, since they were already there. In March of 71, A Man Needs a Maid and There's a World were recorded by Jack Nietzsche with the London Symphony Orchestra after Young made an appearance on the BBC and had a concert in London. In another session at Quadraphonic in April of 71, Out on the Weekend, Harvest, and Journey Through the Past, which is not on this album, along with additional production tweaks to songs were made. The electric guitar songs Are You Ready for the Country, Alabama, and Words were recorded at Neil Young's barn on his Broken Arrow Ranch in California in September of 71, along with his Stray Gators and Jack Nietzsche on lap steel and piano, who is also part of the Stray Gators. Crosby, Stills, and Nash recorded backing vocals in New York for Alabama, Are You Ready for the Country, and Words, in different combinations of the three of them. And Needle and the Damage Done was taken from a live version he did in 1971 at UCLA. And it's typically said that it's about heroin and drug abuse and addiction, and it's about his Crazy Horse bandmate Danny Whitten and the Crosby, Stills, and Nash roadie Bruce Berry, who would eventually both die from heroin use. According to a Rolling Stone interview, which I could not find, so I'm questioning this Wikipedia citation, Young had wanted the album sleeve to biodegrade after the shrink wrap was broken, but this was overruled by the record company, citing that there would be stuff that was product loss, and they just didn't want to do it. They don't care about the environment. So, and however, I did find in a Rolling Stone interview by Cameron Crowe in 1975, Young said that he had a lot of problems with his back during the time of after the gold rush and harvest, which resulted in a loss of mobility, as well as sitting during his entire solo tour that I mentioned before. He said, quote, Crosby would come up to see how I was. We'd go for a walk, and it would take me 45 minutes to get to the studio, which is only 400 yards from the house. I could only stand up 4 hours a day. I recorded most of Harvest in a brace that I wore. That's a lot of the reason it's such a mellow album. I couldn't physically play an electric guitar. Are You Ready for the Country, Alabama, and Words were all done after I had the operation to fix my back. The doctors were starting to talk about wheelchairs and shit, so I had some discs removed. But for the most part, I spent 2 years flat on my back. I had a lot of time to think about what had happened to me.
Jeez.
End quote. Critical reception to this album was mixed to negative initially. Rolling Stone, John Mendelsohn said it was a retread of earlier stuff. Robert Christgau of The Village Voice gave it a mixed review, calling it wooden, guilty of self-imitation on Alabama, and called There's a World unbearable. Of course, we know that doesn't matter ultimately, especially over time, because it was a very popular album. It's his first mainstream wide success. It's arguably his most popular album. It went to #1 on the Billboard UK and Canadian and Australian charts. Heart of Gold was a #1 single. It was the best-selling album of 1972 in the US, holding off Carole King's Tapestry, which dominated 71, and has since gone on to be 4 times platinum, and has, of course, been reappraised positively in the preceding years. So I gave the spiel, the bio. I know you guys are both familiar with this album. I think you are. What did you think of Harvest? John, I think you start this time.
Okay, well, so this is the Neil Young album, and I know that sometimes It's unpopular to call the most popular or the most well-known album the Neil Young album, but this is a phenomenal album. This will be one of my opinion, the best albums of the 70s. It's the best album to start you with if you don't know Neil Young. It's the album that if you do not like this album, you will probably not like the rest of Neil Young's category. Yeah. I don't know how you couldn't. I mean, the song, the Needle and the Damage Done is one of, if not the best song about why drugs are bad. It's a devastating song, lyrically and sonically. A Man Needs a Maid, Old Man. It was really interesting to hear your bio, Josh, because you hear, because Neil Young was not a very old man here, but he's writing songs that just sound, world weary, and every couple years when I listen to this album, it resonates more and more, because this is, with more life experience, the more these songs hit. And not just old man, by the way, because you can take old man from either direction, right? You can be the young person looking at the old man, or, the old man reflecting, right? But there's a lot of world weariness on these lyrics, which I love. The sound is great. I love the mix of the acoustic guitar and the rockin' out songs. I love the track listing on this album. Every time a song comes, it's in the right place, in my opinion, which is something that I really enjoy. It's hard for me to even talk about this album because it's existed for almost as long as I've listened to popular music, in the sense that I've been aware of it. Just about anybody, if you said name a Neil Young song, people might get to other songs ahead of it, but 90% of people are going to pick Heart of Gold. And it's just a phenomenal album. Songs are great. There's no filler on this album. And I don't care what Robert Christgau or John Mendelsohn, says, there ain't filler on this album, in my opinion. This is straight ahead. There's a lot I love of Neil Young, but this is the easiest, most accessible, and arguably best collection of Neil Young material in one spot in album form. So highest recommendation from me. I'll jump in on each of your reactions to expand, but I'll kick it to Matt.
So wait, he was only 27 when this album came out.
Wow, that's
So-
remarkable. When the world weariness here
I
is
know,
like
right?
off the charts. Which so for a 27-year-old, gosh, so
Hard to
Yeah.
think of him as 27, but
Well, you guys know how I feel about Neil Young,
Yes.
and it doesn't change. It doesn't change at all with this record. This and After the Gold Rush, the 1-2 punch there, and I still love Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. But yeah, I agree with John. This is kind of like the Neil Young album. I know there's people out there that, and I still don't know if I like this better than After the Gold Rush. I want to say yes, but I'm not still 100% on it, because I love that album very much as well. And some people will
I'll say
actually
yes for you.
Yeah, well,
I'll say yes
thank
for
you, John. I always like it when you speak for me. And actually, Best Ever Album says that that After the Gold Rush is ranked higher than this. So, but this, yes, John's right. Like something like just with Heart of Gold and Needle in the Damage Done. I mean, two of Young's most well-known songs are on here. I don't think you're not getting that with After the Gold Rush. At best has Southern Man, but I still would think that these songs
Old
are,
Man too. That's another huge hit.
Harvest,
Old Man,
yeah.
yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes, on this, yes, right. You're right. So there are 3 on this. So they definitely outweighs what's going on in terms of hits from After the Gold Rush. So I really love this album as well. There's a great mix. I love the way it begins. Out on the Weekend, that muted, the way that it starts. It's so subtle. It's so muted. It's stripped down, and it's just a beautiful with the drum, the guitar, and that harmonica coming in. Oh, and then it builds a little bit at the end. That is one of my favorite. That is an underrated, Neil Young song. That is a fantastic way to open this record. And it goes into Harvest, which is kind of this little cowboy trot kind of thing. It's another really pretty song. He gets into the orchestration a lot here, which for the most part I don't mind. I think it works out well. Like I like A Man Needs a Maid, the way that kind of builds, and the bombastic like horn section and whatnot. But not as much on There's a World. I would probably say if there is any filler on here, it would be There's a World for me on that. I don't hate it. I think it's fine, and I think it's probably placed pretty well on the album. But it's definitely my least favorite song on the record. It's a little too much with the orchestration.
it feels very like a musical song.
Yeah, and it's got the timpani dong, dong,
Right.
and it's very, and it's got the harp right in the
Yep.
the bridge or whatever. So it's a short song. It doesn't really overstay its welcome or become, overbearing or anything like that. But I would say if there's any fault with this record, it would be with that track. But Alabama's a great song, great guitar riff there. John's right about, Needle in the Damage Done, in terms of just like what a brutal song that is. And it's only 2 minutes long. I didn't even realize that. I'm looking, I'm like, 2 minutes?
It
That's
ends
it?
like so abruptly. I thought the song would keep going.
Nope, it's like that's it. That's all I got to say. What else? So I love Words. That's a great ending. That guitar, I love that. It's the longest song on the album. It's a great long Neil Young track that rocks out. And it just builds. It's great. This is great Neil Young. I mean, and I'm just looking at the other albums. The stretch of Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. Then you've got After the Gold Rush. Then you've got this. Actually, the next album we're going to cover as well. It's the one Neil Young album that I'm not familiar with. It's like On the Beach or At the Beach or something like that. On the Beach. That's like highly regarded. I'm really interested to hear that record because that's one I don't know. But you're potentially, I'm potentially looking at a run of 4 albums in a relatively short period of time that are just like some of my all-time favorite records, and I know he's got plenty more after that. This is the time period that Neil Young is the most revered for, most known for. And he's got some other stuff that's great that appears here and there. But God, these records are just so freaking good, and the fact that he's so young and he's he's just so mature, and he's so confident. This is a confident musician doing a variety of different sounds. The somebody that would be later known as the godfather of grunge, right? And John was talking about Pearl Jam and all these other bands that were really into Neil Young. But for him to be able to do these really beautiful acoustic songs as well, these really heartfelt tunes and country tunes, and do it just so well and so unique. The voice is fantastic. Love Neil's voice. Great record. Big thumbs up. It was. I didn't have to listen to this a whole lot. It's just like, just to remember a couple of things because I know this album very well. But big thumbs up for me. I love Neil.
Yeah, I really like this too. I mean, like John said, this is kind of the template for Neil Young, right? At this point, he has solidified who he is as a musician. It's this country rock, not persona, but style, where he mixes the acoustic with his electric stuff and goes back and forth on his albums with that, or maybe acoustic in the front, electric in the back, but it seems to be interspersed. And he does it, I mean, I don't know if he did it first, but he does it probably the best, and many artists followed his example after that fact. And the whole Americana indie country rock movement is from him, I would say. This album is no exception. I really like all of the songs on here. I love his electric stuff more. That's what I responded to on Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere, and then on After the Gold Rush. But I don't think you can appreciate, or I can't appreciate, the electric stuff that he does without hearing the acoustic stuff beforehand, because it's such a great contrast, and he does both so well. And so it makes me appreciate his electric stuff more, hearing the other stuff. John said it really well again. It is world weary sound. He has these sad songs and soulful for somebody so young, in Heart of Gold and Needle Damage and The Damage Done, and even Alabama, which I would argue we need more songs like that in current day, calling out states for what they're doing.
Well, isn't Alabama is the response to Leonard Skinner, right?
Right. Yep.
No, and the original was Southern Man, right? That they were responding to. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, but I appreciate that. My one quibble with this album is the orchestra songs, the two orchestra backing songs, A Man Needs His Maid and There's a World. I find the orchestra stuff a lit distracting, and it kind of it takes away from the album as a whole for me. I think that those could have been done without the orchestra. I think it's kind of a failed experiment, unfortunately. I don't think it's needed. They would probably sound better without kind of all of the extra stuff from the orchestra on it.
They're definitely interesting choices. You know,
Right.
It's like it definitely, they stand out for sure.
Yeah,
They're
it's
like,
a choice for sure.
Right, and so it's just interesting because that's not, he doesn't do that a ton, at least on other things. So it's kind of interesting, you know, the reasons behind it. You know, so I can see that. I mean, like I said, I do like the way A Man Needs a Maid works more than There's a World. But yeah, they definitely stand out in this record as kind of a little bit of a unique turn.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's an interesting choice to use a live take for Needle and The Damage Done as well. That's the only live song on this album. It's not bad by any stretch. It's just interesting that that's kind of again an outlier. So you've got the acoustic, you've got the electric, you've got two orchestra songs, and then you've got a live acoustic song. So
maybe he just nailed it so well that he was like, I'm not going to get any better than that, so just put it on the record.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good take on the thing. I'm not degrading from that. It's just I guess it gets back to what I was saying in the research, that it was kind of a spontaneous, almost hodgepodge collection of songs, or at least not planned as necessarily an album. It kind of came together more organically, I guess. And yeah, so again, recommend for me. I would, if we're not talking about his next album, Time Fades Away Before On the Beach, I'm going to listen to that to fill the gap, just because I'm a chronological person, obviously, since I'm on this podcast. But I look forward to continuing the Neil Young journey after listening to all these albums.
Can I add one thing that I did not realize till we did a little bit of research on this? Did you know Neil Young was married to Daryl Hannah?
He is married to Daryl
Right,
Hannah.
is. That's what I'm saying. I had no concept of this. But
I
okay.
knew that.
Okay.
And that's actually one of the things that got him really mad at David Crosby, the recent reason, like, because Crosby was like throwing shade at Daryl Hannah for whatever reason, and got all mad at her, and Neil Young didn't appreciate that too much. So that might be she might be the reason why they are not speaking right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Or at least for their most recent, tumultuous interaction. Yeah.
Is she Canadian too? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Look that up.
She's a mermaid. I mean, I know that.
he was married to Carrie Snodgrass until 2014, so that was his long first marriage.
Yeah.
No,
she's from
he was married.
Chicago.
No, he divorced Carrie Snodgrass in the 70s. He married somebody
really?
else. Yeah,
Oh.
because that A Man Needs a Maid is about Carrie Snodgrass.
Yeah.
But they divorced. He married somebody else, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so I'm not paying attention to the personal stuff,
Oh,
obviously.
I don't normally either. I just was so surprised that
Yeah.
that those two people would end up together. It just
Yeah.
fascinated me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I think they've been together, but yeah, I don't remember how I first heard that, but
Yeah, so-
Neil, go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say, yeah, great way to end the episode. Not my favorite album of these three. I think the Brian Eno album edges that out if we're ranking these three albums on the episode. But I enjoyed Harvest.
John, what did you think about that orchestration and those couple songs here?
I get what Josh is saying, but it
Yeah.
worked for me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think it's because the lyrical content of A Man Needs a Maid, it's kind of, he's not being literal, like with a maid,
Yeah.
right? He's more, I think, trying to balance, like, do I want a relationship or do I want just to be by myself, right? That's kind of how I read those lyrics, at least. And the orchestration is almost, it fits in its own weird way, like in terms of, it's like he's scoring his life to some degree. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.